Castle of Lord Juss. Of the rarities that were in the lofty presence chamber, fair and lovely to behold, and of the qualities and conditions of the lords of Demonland, and of the embassies sent unto them by King Gorais the 11th, and of the answer thereto. The eastern stars were paling to the dawn as Lessingham followed his conductor along the grass walk between the shadowy ranks of Irish yews that stood like soldiers, mysterious and expectant in the darkness. The grass was bathed in night dew, and great white lilies sleeping in the shadows of the yews loaded the air of that garden with fragrance. Lessingham felt no touch of the ground beneath his feet, and when he stretched out his hand to touch a tree, his hand passed through branch and leaves as though they were insubstantial as a moonbeam. The little martlet, alighting on his shoulder, laughed in his ear.
"Child of earth," she said, "dost think we are here in dreamland?"
He answered nothing, and she said,
"This is no dream. Thou, first of the children of men, art come to Mercury, where thou and I will journey up and down for a season, to show thee the lands and oceans, the forests, plains, and ancient mountains and palaces of this world, Mercury, and the doings of them that dwell therein. But here thou canst not handle aught, neither make the folk ware of thee, not though thou shout thy throat hoarse. For thou and I walk here impalpable and invisible, as it were two dreams walking."
They were now on the marble steps which led from the yew walk to the terrace opposite the great gate of the castle.
"No need to unbar gates to thee and me,"
said the martlet, as they passed beneath the darkness of that ancient portal carved with strange devices, and cleaned through the massy timbers of the bolted gate thickly riveted with silver into the inner court.
"Go we into the lofty presence chamber, and there tarry a while. Morning is kindling the upper air, and folk will soon be stirring in the castle, for they lie not long abed when day begins in Demonland. For be it known to thee, O Earthborn, that this land is Demonland, and this castle the Castle of Lord Juss, and this day now dawning his birthday, when the demons hold high festival in Juss's castle to do honour unto him and to his brethren, Spitfire and Goldry and Blushko. And these and their fathers before them bear rule from time immemorial in Demonland, and have the lordship over all the demons."
She spoke, and the first low beams of the sun smote javelin-like through the eastern windows, and the freshness of morning breathed and shimmered in that lofty chamber, chasing the blue and dusty shades of departed night to the corners and recesses, and to the rafters of the vaulted roof. Surely no potentate of earth, not Croesus, nor the great king, not Minos in his royal palace in Crete, not all the pharaohs, not Queen Semiramis, nor all the kings of Babylon and Nineveh had ever a throne room to compare in glory with that high presence chamber of the lords of Demonland. Its walls and pillars were of snow-white marble. Every vein thereof was set with small gems, rubies, corals, garnets, and pink topaz. 7 pillars on either side bore up the shadowy vault of the roof. The roof tree and the beams were of gold, curiously carved, the roof itself of mother of pearl. A side aisle ran behind each row of pillars, and 7 paintings on the western side faced 7 spacious windows on the east. At the end of the hall upon a dais stood 3 high seats, the arms of each composed of 2 hippogriffs wrought in gold, with wings spread, and the legs of the seats the legs of the hippogriffs. But the body of each high seat was a single jewel of monstrous size. The left-hand seat a black opal, a sparkle with steel-blue fire. The next a fire opal, as it were a burning coal. The third seat an alexandrite, purple like wine by night, but deep sea-green by day. 10 more pillars stood in semicircle behind the high seats, bearing up upon them and the dais a canopy of gold. The benches that ran from end to end of the lofty chamber were of cedar, inlaid with coral and ivory, and so were the tables that stood before the benches. The floor and chamber was tessellated of marble and green tourmaline, and on every square of tourmaline was carven the image of a fish, as the dolphin, the conger, the catfish, the salmon, the tunny, the squid, and other wonders of the deep. Hangings of tapestry were behind the high seats, worked with flowers, snake's head, snapdragon, dragon mouth, and their kind. And on the dado below the windows were sculptures of birds and beasts and creeping things. But a great wonder of this chamber, and a marvel to behold, was how the capital of every one of the 24 pillars was hewn from a single precious stone, carved by the hand of some sculptor of long ago into the living form of a monster. Here was a harpy with a screaming mouth, so wondrously cut in ochre-tinted jade it was a marvel to hear no scream from her. Here, in wine-yellow topaz, a flying fire-drake. There a cockatrice made of a single ruby. There a star-sapphire, the colour of moonlight, cut for a cyclops, so that the rays of the star trembled from his single eye. Salamanders, mermaids, chimeras, wild men of the woods, leviathans, all hewn from faultless gems, thrice the bulk of a man's body, velvet dark sapphires, crystallite, beryl, amethyst, and the yellow zircon that is like transparent gold. To give light to the presence chamber were 7 escarbuncles, great as pumpkins, hung in order down the length of it, and 9 fair moonstones standing in order on silver pedestals between the pillars of the dais. These jewels, drinking in the sunshine by day, gave it forth during the hours of darkness in a radiance of pink light and a soft effulgence as of moonbeams. And yet another marvel. The nether side of the canopy over the high seats was encrusted with lapis lazuli, and in that feigned dome of heaven burned the 12 signs of the zodiac, every star a diamond that shone with its own light. Folk now began to be astir in the castle, and there came a score of serving men into the presence chamber with brooms and brushes, cloths and leathers, to sweep and garnish it, and burnish the golden jewels of the chamber. Lissom they were, and sprightly of gait, of fresh complexion and fair head. Horns grew on their heads. When their tasks were accomplished, they departed, and the presence began to fill with guests. A joy it was to see such a shifting maze of velvets, furs, curious needleworks, and cloth of tissue, tiffanies, laces, ruffs, goodly chains, and carcanets of gold. Such glitter of jewels and weapons, such nodding of the plumes the demons wore in their hair, half veiling the horns that grew upon their heads. Some were sitting on the benches or leaning on the polished tables, some walking forth and back upon the shining floor. Here and there were women among them, women so fair, one had said. It is surely white-armed Helen, this one. This Arcadian Atalanta. This Phryne that stood to Praxiteles for Aphrodite's picture. This Thais, for whom great Alexander, to pleasure her fantasy, did burn Persepolis like a candle. This, she that was rapt by the dark god from the flowering fields of Enna, to be queen forever among the dead that be departed. Now came a stir near the stately doorway, and Lessingham beheld a demon of burly frame and noble port, richly attired. His face was ruddy and somewhat freckled, his forehead wide, his eyes calm and blue like the sea. His beard, thick and tawny, was parted and brushed back and upwards on either side. "Tell me, my little martlet," said Lessingham, "is this Lord Juss?"
"This is not Lord Juss," answered the martlet, "nor aught so worshipful as he. The lord thou seest is Volley, who dwelleth under Cartadza by the salt sea. A great sea captain is he, and one that did service to the cause of Demonland, and of the whole world besides, in the late wars against the ghouls. But cast thine eyes again towards the door, where one standeth amid a knot of friends, tall and somewhat stooping, in a corslet of silver, and a cloak of old brocaded silk, coloured like tarnished gold, something like to Volley in feature, but swarthy, and with bristling black mustachios."
"I see him," said Lessingham. "This, then, is Lord Juss."
"Not so," said Martlet. "'Tis but Viz, brother to Volley. He is wealthiest in goods of all the demons, save the three brethren only, and Lord Brandoch de Ha."
"And who is this?" asked Lessingham, pointing to one of light and brisk step and humorous eye, who in that moment met Volley and engaged him in converse apart. Handsome of face he was, albeit somewhat long-nosed and sharp-nosed, keen and hard, and filled with life and the joy of it.
"Here thou beholdest," answered she, "Lord Zig, the far-famed tamer of horses, well loved among the demons, for he is merry of mood, and a mighty man of his hands withal, when he leadeth his horsemen against the enemy."
Volley threw up his beard and laughed a great laugh at some jest that Zig whispered in his ear, and Lessingham leaned forward into the hall if haply he might catch what was said. The hum of talk drowned the words, but leaning forward, Lessingham saw where the arras curtains behind the dais parted for a moment, and one of princely bearing advanced past the high seats down the body of the hall. His gait was delicate, as of some lithe beast of prey newly wakened out of slumber, and he greeted with lazy grace the many friends who hailed his entrance. Very tall was that lord, and slender of build, like a girl. His tunic was of silk coloured like the wild rose, and embroidered in gold with representations of flowers and thunderbolts. Jewels glittered on his left hand, and on the golden bracelets on his arms, and on the fillet twined among the golden curls of his hair, set with plumes of the king bird of paradise. His horns were dyed with saffron and inlaid with filigree work of gold. His buskins were laced with gold, and from his belt hung a sword, narrow of blade and keen, the hilt rough with beryls and black diamonds. Strangely light and delicate was his frame and seeming, yet with a sense of slumbering power beneath, as the delicate peak of a snow mountain seen afar in the low red rays of morning. His face was beautiful to look upon, and softly coloured like a girl's face, and his expression one of gentle melancholy, mixed with some disdain. But fiery glints awoke at intervals in his eyes, and the lines of swift determination hovered round the mouth below his curled mustachios. "At last," murmured Lessingham, "at last, Lord Juss."
"Little art thou to blame," said the martlet, "for this misprision, for scarce could a lordier sight have joyed thine eyes. Yet is this not Juss, but Lord Brandoch de Ha, to whom all Demonland west of Shalgreth and Stroparden oweth allegiance. The rich vineyards of Crothering, the broad pasture lands of Frailsea, and all the western islands and their crag-bound fastnesses. Think not, because he affecteth silks and jewels like a queen, and carrieth himself light and dainty as a silver birch-tree on the mountain, that his hand is light, or his courage doubtful in war. For years was he held for the third best man-at-arms in all Mercury, along with these, Goldry Blushko and Gorais the 10th of Witchland. And Gorais he slew 9 summers back in single combat, when the witches harried in Goblinland, and Brandoch Dahar led 580 demons to succour Gaslark, the king of that country. And now can none surpass Lord Brandoch Dahar in feats of arms, save perchance Goldry alone. Yet lo,
she said, as a sweet and wild music stole on the ear, and the guests turned towards the dais, and the hangings parted.
At last the triple lordship of Demonland. Strike softly, music, smile, fates, on this festal day. Joy and safe days shine for this world and Demonland. Turn thy gaze first on him who walks in majesty in the midst, his tunic of olive green velvet ornamented with devices of hidden meaning in thread of gold and beads of chrysolite. Mark how the buskins, clasping his stalwart calves, glitter with gold and amber. Mark the dusty cloak streamed with gold and lined with blood-red silk. A charmed cloak, made by the sylphs in forgotten days, bringing good hap to the wearer, so he be true of heart and no dastard. Mark him that weareth it, his sweet dark countenance, the violet fire in his eyes, the sombre warmth of his smile, like autumn woods in late sunshine. This is Lord Juss, Lord of this age-remembering castle, than whom none hath more worship in wide Demonland. Somewhat he knoweth of art magical, yet useth not that art, for it sappeth the life and strength. Nor is it held worthy that a demon should put trust in that art, but rather in his own might and main. Now, turn thine eyes to him that leaneth on Juss's left arm. Shorter, but mayhap sturdier than he, apparelled in black silk that shimmers with gold as he moveth, and crowned with black eagle's feathers among his horns and yellow hair. His face is wild and keen like a sea-eagle's, and from his bristling brows his eyes dart glances sharp as a glancing spear. A faint flame, pallid like the fire of a will-o'-the-wisp, breathes ever and anon from his distended nostrils. This is Lord Spitfire, impetuous in war. Last, behold on Juss's right hand yon lord that bulks mighty as Hercules, yet steppeth lightly as a heifer. The thews and sinews of his great limbs ripple as he moves beneath a skin whiter than ivory. His cloak of cloth of gold is heavy with jewels. His tunic of black sendaline hath great hearts worked thereon in rubies and red silk thread. Slung from his shoulders clanks a two-handed sword, the pommel a huge star ruby carven in the image of a heart, for the heart is the sign and symbol. This is that sword forged by the elves, wherewith he slew the sea monster, as thou mayest see in the painting on the wall. Noble he is of countenance, most like to his brother Juss, but darker brown of hair, and ruddier of hue, and bigger of cheekbone. Look well on him, for never shall thine eyes behold a greater champion than the Lord Goldry Blushko, captain of the hosts of Demonland."
Now, when the greetings were done, and the strains of the lutes and recorders sighed and lost themselves in the shadowy vault of the roof, the cupbearers did fill great gems made in form of cups with ancient wine, and the demons caroused to Lord Juss deep draughts in honour of this day of his nativity. And now they were ready to set forth by twos and threes into the parks and pleasaunces, some to take their pleasure about the fair gardens of fish-ponds, some to hunt wild game among the wooded hills, some to disport themselves at quoits or tennis, or riding at the ring, or martial exercises, that so they might spend the lifelong day as befitteth high holiday, in pleasure and action without care, and thereafter revel in the lofty presence-chamber till night grew old with eating and drinking and all delight. But as they were upon going forth, a trumpet was sounded without, 3 strident blasts. "What killjoy have we here?" said Spitfire. "The trumpet soundeth only for travellers from the outlands. I feel it in my bones some rascal is come to Galing, one that bringeth ill hap in his pocket, and a shadow athwart the sun on this our day of festival." "Speak no word of ill omen," answered Juss. "Whoever it be, we will straight dispatch his business, and so fall to pleasure indeed. Sam, run to the gate and bring him in." The serving man hastened and returned, saying, "Lord, it is an ambassador from Witchland and his train. Their ship made land at Lookingshavenness at nightfall. They slept on board, and your soldiers gave them escort to Galing at break of day. He craveth present audience." "From Witchland, huh?" said Juss. "Such smokes use ever to go before the fire." "Shalt bid the fellow," said Spitfire, "wait on our pleasure. It is a pity such should poison our gladness." Goldry laughed and said, "Whom hath he sent us? Laxus, think you, to make his peace with us again for that vile part of his practice against us off Cartadza, detestably falsifying his word he had given us?" Juss said to the serving man, "Thou sawest the ambassador. Who is he?" "Lord," answered he, "his face was strange to me. He is little of stature, and by your highness's leave the most unlike to a great lord of Witchland that ever I saw. And by your leave, for all the marvellous rich and sumptuous coat he weareth, he is very like a false jewel in a rich casing." "Well," said Juss, "a sour draught sweetens not in the waiting. Call we in the ambassador." Lord Juss sat in the high seat midmost of the dais, with Goldry on his right in the seat of the black opal, and on his left Spitfire, throned on the Alexandrite. On the dais sat likewise those other lords of Demonland, and the guests of lower degree thronged the benches and the polished tables as the wide doors opened on their silver hinges, and the ambassador with pomp and ceremony paced up the shining floor of marble and green tourmaline. "Why, what a beastly fellow this is," said Lord Goldry in his brother's ear. "His hairy hands reach down to his knees, as shuffleth in his walk like a hobbled jackass." "I like not the dirty face of the ambassador," said Lord Zig. "His nose sitteth flat on the face of him as it were a dab of clay, and I can see pat up his nostrils a summer's day's journey into his head. If's upper lip bespeaketh him not a rare spouter of rank fustian, perdition catch me. Were it a finger's breadth longer, he might tuck it into his collar to keep his chin warm of a summer's night." "I like not the smell of the ambassador," said Lord Brandoch Dahar, and he called for censers and sprinklers of lavender and rosewater to purify the chamber, and let open the crystal windows that the breezes of heaven might enter and make all sweet. So the ambassador walked up the shining floor and stood before the lords of Demonland that sat upon the high seats between the golden hippogriffs. He was robed in a long mantle of scarlet lined with ermine, with crabs, woodlice, and centipedes worked thereon in golden thread. His head was covered with a black velvet cap with a peacock's feather fastened with a brooch of silver. Supported by his train-bearers and attendants, and leaning on his golden staff, he with raucous accent delivered his mission.
Juss, Goldry, and Spitfire, and ye other demons, I come before you as ambassador of Gorais the 11th, most glorious King of Witchland, Lord and Great Duke of Butany and Estremarine, Commander of Shulan, Framney, Mingos, and Permio, and High Warden of the Esamokian Marches, Great Duke of Trace, King Paramount of Bestria and Nevria, and Prince of Ar, Great Lord over the country of Oyedia, Maltraini, and of Baltari and Toribia, and Lord of many other countries, most glorious and most great, whose power and glory is over all the world, and whose name shall endure for all generations. And first, I bid you be bound by that reverence for my sacred office of envoy of the king, which is accorded by all people and potentates, save such as be utterly barbarous to ambassadors and envoys.
Speak, and fear not, answered Juss. Thou hast mine oath, and that hath never been forsworn to witch or other barbarian. The ambassador shot out his lips in an O, and threatened with his head, then grinned, laying bare his sharp and misshapen teeth, and proceeded.
Thus saith King Gorais, great and glorious, and he chargeth me to deliver it to you, neither adding any word or taking away. I have it in mind that no ceremony of homage or fealty hath been performed before me by the dwellers in my province of Demonland.
As the rustling of leaves strewn in a flagged court when a sudden wind striketh them, there went a stir among the guests. Nor might the Lord Spitfire contain his wrath, but springing up and clapping hand to sword hilt, as minded to do a hurt to the ambassador, "Province," he cried, "are not the demons a free people? And is it to be endured that Witchland should commission this slave to cast insult in our teeth, and this in our own castle?" A murmur went about the hall, and here and there folk rose from their seats. The ambassador drew down his head between his shoulders like a tortoise, baring his teeth and blinking with his small eyes. But Lord Brandoch Dahar, lightly laying his hand on Spitfire's arm, said, "The ambassador had not ended his message, cousin, and thou hast frightened him. Have patience, and spoil not the comedy. We shall not lack words to answer King Gorais. No, nor swords, if he must have them. But it shall not be said of us of Demonland that it needeth but a boorish message to turn us from our ancient courtesy towards ambassadors and heralds." So spake Lord Brandoch Dahar in lazy, half-mocking tone, as one who but idly returneth the ball of conversation, yet clearly so that all might hear. And wherewith the murmurs died down, and Spitfire said, "I am tame. Say thine errand freely, and imagine not that we shall hold thee answerable for aught thou sayest, but him that sent thee." "Whose humble mouthpiece I only am," said the ambassador, somewhat gathering courage, "and who, saving your reverence, lacketh not the will, nor the power to take revenge for any outrage done upon his servants. Thus saith the king, I therefore summon and command you, Juss, Spitfire, and Goldry Brusco, to make haste and come to me in Witchland in my fortress of Carcy, and there dutifully kiss my toe in witness before all the world that I am your lord and king, and rightful overlord of all Demonland." Gravely and without gesture, Lord Juss hearkened to the ambassador, leaning back in his high seat, with either arm thrown athwart the arched neck of the hippogriff. Goldry, smiling scornfully, toyed with the hilt of his great sword. Spitfire sat strained and glowering, the sparks crackling at his nostrils. "Thou hast delivered all," said Juss. "All," answered the ambassador. "Thou shalt have thine answer," said Juss. While we take rede thereon, eat and drink. And he beckoned the cupbearer to pour out bright wine for the ambassador. But the ambassador excused himself, saying that he was not athirst, and that he had store of food and wine aboard of his ship, which should suffice his needs and those of his following. Then said Lord Spitfire, No marvel, though, the spawn of Witchland fear venom in the cup, they who work commonly such villainy against their enemies, as witness Receder of Goblinland, whom Cursus, murdered with a poisonous draught, shakes still in the knees, lest themselves be so entertained to their destruction. And snatching up the cup, he quaffed it to the dregs, and dashed it on the marble floor before the ambassador, so that it was shivered into pieces. And the lords of Demonland rose up and withdrew behind the flowery hangings into the chamber apart, to determine of their answer to the message sent unto them by King Gorais of Witchland. When they were private together, Spitfire spake, and said, Is it to be borne that a king should put such shame and mockery upon us? Could they not at the least have made a son of Gorrond or of Corsus his ambassador to bring us his defiance, instead of this, filthiest of his domestics, a gibbering dwarf fit only to make them gab and game at their tippling bouts, when they be 3 parts senseless with boozing? Lord Juss smiled somewhat scornfully. With wisdom, he said, and with foresight hath Witchland made choice of his time to move against us, knowing that 33 of our well-built ships are sunken in Cardadza Sound in the battle with the ghouls, and but 14 remain to us. Now that the ghouls are slain, every soul, and utterly abolished from this world, and so the great curse and peril of all this world ended by the sword and great valour of Demonland alone, now seem the happy moment unto these late mouth friends to fall upon us. For have not the witches a strong fleet of ships, since their whole fleet fled at the beginning of their flight with us against the ghouls, leaving us to bear the burden? And now are they minded for this new treason, to set upon us traitorously and suddenly in this disadvantage. For the king well judgeth we can carry no army to Witchland, nor do aught in his despite, but must be long months a shipbuilding. And doubt not he holdeth an armament ready aboard at Tenemos to sail hither. If he get the answer, he knoweth we shall send him.
Sit we at ease, then, said Goldry, sharpening our swords, and let him ship his armies across the salt sea. Not a witch shall land in Demonland, but shall leave here his blood and bones to make fat our cornfields and our vineyards.
Rather, said Spitfire, apprehend this rascal, and put to sea today with the 14 ships left us. We can surprise Witchland in his strong place of Carsey, sack it, and give him to the crows to peck at, or ever he is well awake to the swiftness of our answer. That is my counsel. Nay, said Juss, we shall not take him sleeping. Be certain that his ships are ready and watching in the Witchland seas, prepared against any rash onset. It were folly to set our neck in the noose, and little glory to Demonland to await his coming. This then is my rede. I will bid Gorais to the Dwello, and make offer to him to let lie on the fortune thereof the decision of this quarrel.
A good rede, if it might be fulfilled, said Goldry. But never will he dare to stand with weapons in single combat gainst thee or gainst any of us. Nevertheless, the thing shall be brought about. Is not Gorais a mighty wrestler? And hath he not in his palace in Carsey the skulls and bones of 99 great champions, whom he hath vanquished and slain in that exercise? Puffed up beyond measure is he in his own conceit, and folks say it is a grief to him that none hath been found this long while that durst wrestle with him, and woefully he pineth for the 100th. He shall wrestle a fall with me.
Now this seemed good to them all, so when they had talked on it a while and concluded what they would do, glad of heart, the lords of Demonland turned them back to the lofty presence chamber. And there Lord Juss spake and said, Demons, ye have heard the words which the king of Witchland in the overweening pride and shamelessness of his heart hath spoken unto us by the mouth of this ambassador. Now this is our answer which my brother shall give, the Lord Goldry Blushko. And we charge thee, O ambassador, to deliver it truly, neither adding any word nor taking away. And the Lord Goldry spake, We, the lords of Demonland, do utterly scorn thee, Gorais the 11th, for the greatest of dastards, in that thou basely fleddest and forsook us, thy sworn confederates, in the sea battle against the Ghouls. Our swords, which in that battle ended so great a curse and peril to all this world, are not bent nor broken. They shall be sheathed in the bowels of thee and thy minions, Corsus to wit, and Corrund, and their sons, and Corinius, and what other evil-doers harbour in waterish Witchland, sooner than one little sea-pink growing on the cliffs of Demonland shall do thee obeisance. But that thou mayest, if so thou wilt, feel our power somewhat, I, Lord Goldry Blushko, make thee this offer, that thou and I do match ourselves singly each against other to wrestle 3 fools at the court of the Red Folliot, who inclineth neither to our side nor to thine in this quarrel. And we will bind ourselves by mighty oaths to these conditions, that if I overcome thee, the demons shall leave you of Witchland in peace, and ye them, and the witches shall forswear for ever their impudent claims on Demonland. But if thou, Gorais, win the day, then hast thou the glory of that victory, and withal full liberty to thrust thy claims upon us with the sword. So spake the Lord Goldry Blushko, standing in great pride and splendour beneath the starry canopy, and scowling terribly on the ambassador from Witchland, so that the ambassador was abashed, and his knees smote together. And Goldry called his scribe, and made him write the message for Gorais the king in great characters on a scroll of parchment, and the lords of Demonland sealed it with their seals, and gave it to the ambassador. The ambassador took it, and made haste to depart. But when he was come to the stately doorway of the presence chamber, being near the door and among his attendants, and away from the lords of Demonland, he plucked up heart a little, and turned, and said, Rashly, and to thy certain undoing, O Goldry Blushko, hast thou bidden our lord the king to contend with thee in wrestling. For be thou ever so mighty of limb, yet hath he overthrown as mighty. And he wrestleth not for sport, but will surely work thy life's decay, and keep the dead bones of thee with the bones of the 99 champions whom he hath heretofore laid low in that exercise. Therewith, because Goldry and the other lords scowled upon him terribly, and the guests near the door fell to hooting and reviling of the witches, the ambassador went forth hastily down the shining stairs and across the court, as one who fleeth along a lane on a dark and windy night, daring not to turn his head, lest his eye behold some fearful thing prepared to clasp him. So speeding, he was fain to catch up about his knees the folds of his velvet cloak, richly worked with crabs and creeping things, and huge whooping and laughter went up among the common lag of people without, to behold his long and nerveless tail thus bare to the unfriendly gaze, insomuch that they fell to shouting with one accord, Though his mouth be foul, he hath a fair tail. Saw ye not his tail? Hurrah for Gorais, who hath sent us a monkey for his ambassador! And with jibe and unmannerly yell, the crowd hung lovingly upon the ambassador and his train all the way down from Galing Castle to the quays, so that it was like a sweet home-coming to him to come on board his well-built ship and have her rowed amain out to Lookinghaven. So when they had rounded Lookinghavenness and were free of the land, they hoisted sail and voyaged before a favouring breeze eastward over the teeming deep of Witchland.